Honestly, I never thought my life would end up like this. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here typing a confession about how I destroyed my marriage and my husband's trust, I would have laughed it off. But here I am. My name is Joya Mitchell. I'm 32, and this is how I lost everything that ever mattered because of one terrible decision that spiraled into something much darker. It started with a company party. My husband Mark and I had been married for 6 years. We weren't perfect, but we weren't broken either. He worked in logistics for our mid-sized tech firm in Millbrook, a quiet New England town where gossip traveled faster than the internet. Mark was simple, khaki pants, coffee in hand, small dreams. He wasn't flashy like the men I worked with, especially not like Jacob Reeves, our CEO. Jacob was charm in a tailored suit. He made everyone feel seen, admired, wanted. And when you've been married for a few years and life feels routine, attention like that can feel like oxygen. That night, the company hosted a lake house party. Music, drinks, people letting loose, it all blurred together. I remember Jacob complimenting my dress, whispering something about how he liked confidence. I'd had a few drinks, and before I realized what was happening, he pulled me into the pool with him. Everyone laughed, phones out, cheering. It was wild, impulsive, stupid. I thought it was harmless fun until it wasn't, because someone filmed us. And that video went viral by morning. I woke up to my husband standing in the kitchen, pale as death, staring at his phone. When he looked up at me, I knew. He'd seen it. "You're famous," he said, showing me the screen, me, in Jacob's arms, laughing like a fool. I tried to explain. Said it was just a party, that people were drinking, that it meant nothing. But Mark wasn't buying it. His eyes were cold, his jaw set. "You call that having fun?" he shouted. "You made me a joke in front of everyone." I'd never seen him that angry. And honestly, I panicked. I gaslighted him. Told him he was overreacting, insecure, the usual lies people tell when they're desperate to avoid the truth. But deep down, I was terrified. Because it wasn't just the video. Jacob and I had crossed lines long before that night. It started with harmless flirting at work. "You deserve more than you get, Joya," he'd say. "You're too smart to be stuck where you are." He made me feel important in ways Mark never did anymore. And when someone powerful admires you, it's easy to start believing the lie that you deserve better. After the party, Mark told me he was filing for divorce. Just like that. He walked away, and I thought it was just anger talking. But when I saw him drive off, something in me knew. I'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. I went to work early, trying to get ahead of the storm. Jacob told me to relax and let his PR team handle it. But by afternoon, the video had 60,000 views. People were whispering in the hallways, laughing when I passed. Jacob pretended nothing happened, like he was untouchable. And honestly, he was. Everyone loved him. Except my husband. That night, I noticed something strange. When I got home, Mark wasn't there. But his car was gone. The next morning, I saw he'd emptied his side of the closet. No note, no message. Just silence. I told myself I didn't care. That I'd start over. But the guilt followed me everywhere. And then, a week later, Mark served me divorce papers. Quick, clean, emotionless. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because while I was trying to pick up the pieces, Mark was already digging. He'd always been quiet, the kind of man people underestimate. But not anymore. 2 days later, Jacob called me into his office. He was calm as always, sipping espresso like the world revolved around him. "You're not worried, are you?" he asked. "About what?" "That little video. These things blow over. I've handled worse." I wanted to believe him. I really did. He promised he'd protect me, that we'd get through it together. He even joked about making it official once my divorce was final. That's when I realized how deep I'd fallen. I was clinging to the man who'd just wrecked my marriage. A week later, rumors started spreading around the office. Someone, I didn't know who at the time, had leaked private emails between Jacob and me. And not just flirtatious messages, but proof of something worse. Company secrets. Layoff plans. Manipulation. The emails painted me as Jacob's co-conspirator, The HR manager who helped fire people he didn't like, including, apparently, my own husband. When I read that line, Mark's getting suspicious. Maybe time for restructuring and logistics. I felt sick, because it was real. I'd been helping Jacob plan to fire my husband without even realizing it. That's when I knew someone had gone through my office. Someone had found everything.
Mark.
He'd always known where I kept my spare keys. He'd been in my life long enough to predict every move. He had evidence, and I had no idea how far he'd go. That night, Jacob came over to my house. He told me not to panic, that he'd take care of it. His idea of taking care of things was never subtle. If he tries to expose us, I'll ruin him, Jacob said.
He's a small man.
Nobody believes small men. I should have walked away right then. But I didn't. I was too far in. Too scared of losing everything. What I didn't know was that Mark had already started building his revenge, and it was brilliant. He didn't shout, didn't beg, didn't even confront me again. He was planning something much bigger. And when he finally struck, he didn't just destroy Jacob. He destroyed both of us. If guilt could kill, I wouldn't be writing this right now. A week after Mark filed for divorce, I thought the worst was behind me. I told myself the scandal would fade, that people would move on to some new gossip. But every time I walked into the office, I felt the whispers. Every phone notification made my stomach drop. Still, I clung to Jacob Reeves, believing he'd protect me. He always said, "Loyalty is rewarded, Joya." But I didn't realize that loyalty to a man like Jacob was like tying yourself to a sinking ship. It only drags you down faster. Then one morning, I heard something that made my blood run cold. One of the receptionists, a kind girl named Megan, whispered, "Did you hear? Mark's talking to lawyers. He's gathering proof."
Proof.
Of what, exactly? That I'd cheated? That I'd helped Jacob fire people? Or that I'd let my greed and pride destroy our marriage? That night, Jacob called me and said, "Don't worry about him. I've handled worse. He's harmless." But I'd been married to Mark long enough to know, when he went quiet, that's when he was dangerous. He wasn't the type to shout or break things. He was the type to wait and strike when it hurt most. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Jacob seemed tense. He was making calls behind closed doors, yelling at people, pacing his office. He stopped smiling in meetings. Something was definitely wrong. I asked him once what was going on. "Just company politics," he said. "People are jealous. I've got it under control." But the lie in his eyes was clear. I just didn't know the storm that was coming, one that Mark had set in motion. The Millbrook Summer Festival was a big deal in our town, a yearly event full of food stalls, music, speeches, and family-friendly fun. This year, our company was a major sponsor. Jacob was supposed to give a speech about leadership and integrity. The irony still burns me. He invited me to come, saying it would help people move on from the scandal. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stay home and hide, but another part wanted to prove that I wasn't afraid. So I went. I wore a simple black dress, the one Jacob always said made me look powerful. Funny how power feels just like shame when everyone knows your secrets. When I arrived, I saw Mark sitting near the back of the big event tent.
Alone.
He wasn't angry. He wasn't glaring. He was calm, too calm. And when our eyes met, he gave me the smallest nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It was warning. Something about that look made my heart race. The evening started normally, speeches, community awards, polite applause. Jacob was in his element, charming everyone as usual. He even made a joke on stage about resilience in challenging times.
People laughed.
I forced a smile. Then came the intermission. The MC announced a short video presentation, a celebration of our local business community. Jacob winked at me from the stage, like it was all part of his show. The lights dimmed. The big LED screen flickered to life. At first, it was harmless. Footage of shops, smiling employees, happy background music.
Then, the music changed.
And my world ended. The pool video appeared. Me, in Jacob's arms. His hands on me. My face, laughing, winking at the camera. The sound was crystal clear, The crowd cheering, my voice, his voice. Gasps filled the tent. Someone screamed. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Before I could even move, another clip started playing, this one worse. Jacob and me at his lake house. Me wearing one of his shirts, his hands all over me, his mouth on my neck. The timestamp showed it was during work hours, when I was supposed to be in meetings. I could hear people whispering my name. That's her. She's married. Oh my God. I looked toward the control booth. And there he was. Mark. Standing calmly in the corner, arms crossed, watching it all. I wanted to scream, to make it stop, but my body wouldn't move. Jacob, on the other hand, exploded. Turn that off. Now, he yelled, shoving through the crowd. But it wasn't over yet. The final segment of the video showed screenshots of our emails. My name, my words, Jacob's promises, his manipulation. Worse, it showed business secrets. How he planned layoffs, how I'd helped smooth things over. There was no way to spin it. It was all there, projected 20 feet tall for the whole town to see. The video ended with white text on a black screen. This has been a public service announcement about integrity in local business. The lights came back on. The silence was deafening. I turned and saw Jacob's wife, Margaret, standing near the front, tears streaming down her face, shaking with rage. She threw her wine glass at him, screaming. People started filming. My parents, who'd come to town for the festival, were staring at me like they didn't recognize their daughter. And Mark, he just stood there, silent, watching the empire burn. Jacob lunged toward him, shouting, "You think you're clever, huh? This isn't over." Mark didn't flinch. "It's over now," he said quietly and walked away. That's when I realized what true power looked like. It wasn't in money or titles. It was in calm, quiet revenge. The rest of the night was chaos. Reporters, gossip, people recording every moment. I left before the police showed up, but the damage was already done. By morning, the video was everywhere. Local news, Facebook, TikTok, even people I didn't know were sending me screenshots. Cheating HR manager and her CEO lover exposed at community festival. My phone blew up. Half the world hated me. The other half pitied me. Jacob called me a dozen times that night, screaming about betrayal. "You stupid woman. Do you have any idea what you've done?" He blamed me, said I was careless, that I should have destroyed those emails. But he was the one whose empire was crumbling, and he knew it. Within 48 hours, 3 clients canceled contracts. His company's stock fell overnight. And Mark's video, my humiliation, was being dissected on YouTube, Reddit, everywhere. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that screen. My face, my shame, the entire town watching. I thought Mark had finally finished me off. But I was wrong again. He wasn't done, not yet. Because when Jacob fought back, he aimed to destroy Mark completely and dragged me even deeper into hell. After the festival, my life fell apart faster than I thought possible. The morning after, I couldn't even step outside. Reporters had parked outside my house, cameras flashing through the windows. My parents had already left town in humiliation. The company suspended me, pending investigation, which was just their polite way of firing me. And Jacob, he'd stopped answering my calls. The man who once told me I was irreplaceable had vanished. His number went straight to voicemail. His assistant said he was dealing with legal issues. I was alone. Completely and utterly alone. For days, I couldn't even bring myself to look at my reflection. All I saw was a woman who had traded love for ego, loyalty for lust, and ended up with nothing but shame. But I told myself one thing. At least it couldn't get worse. I was wrong again. 3 days later, Jacob finally called. His voice wasn't warm or charming anymore. It was cold, furious. "Do you have any idea what you've done, Joya? What are you talking about? You said you'd handle it." Handle it? Mark just destroyed everything. Clients, investors, my reputation gone. And now he's got lawyers digging into my emails. I froze. "Your emails?" "Yes, my emails. The ones from your computer. Do you realize how bad this looks? They think you hacked me." That's when it hit me. Mark had used printed copies, meaning there was no digital trail. Jacob couldn't prove where the files came from.
So now, to save himself, he was blaming me. Jacob, I didn't. Save it, he snapped.
If I go down, I'm not going alone. Remember that. He hung up. That was the last time we ever spoke. The following week, I heard that Jacob's company was collapsing. The board of directors held an emergency meeting. Stock prices plummeted. And while the internet was tearing him apart, he started trying to rewrite the story. He told people that I was unstable, obsessed, that I'd stalked him after he ended things. He called me a disgruntled employee who had leaked fake documents out of revenge. Some people believed him. Some didn't. But either way, it didn't matter. The damage was done. Mark, on the other hand, kept quiet. No interviews, no social media. Just silence. He'd already won. But the quiet didn't last long. One morning, my lawyer called. Joya, you might want to sit down. Apparently, Jacob had filed a counterclaim, saying that Mark had illegally access to systems and stolen data. And since the emails had come from my office, my name was on the list too.
It was a nightmare.
I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't breathe. Every knock on the door made me think the police had come for me. That's when I started to understand what Mark must have felt, that helpless, sinking feeling of losing control. But while Jacob was trying to weaponize fear, Mark was doing something else entirely. He was building the endgame. It started quietly. A friend from work, the only one who still spoke to me, told me that federal agents had visited the office. They weren't just investigating a scandal anymore. They were investigating Jacob Reeves himself. At first, I didn't believe it. But then, I got a call from a woman named Sarah Chen, one of Jacob's former employees. Her voice trembled as she spoke. You don't know me, Joya, but I used to work under Jacob. I saw what he did. To you, to others. I was one of them too. One of them. His victims. He keeps files, Joya. On every woman he's ever had an affair with. Photos, videos, personal details, blackmail material. My stomach twisted. You're lying. I wish I was. He uses it to control people, threaten them if they talk. But your husband, Mark, he's the only one who fought back. He has the evidence now. I dropped the phone. It was like the final piece of the puzzle had snapped into place. Mark hadn't just been taking revenge. He'd been seeking justice. Not just for himself, but for everyone Jacob had hurt. And somehow, despite everything, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. He wasn't destroying Jacob out of rage. He was doing what no one else could. And in some twisted way, I realized he was still the same man I'd betrayed. Strong. Quiet. Unbreakable. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my living room staring at the wall, wondering what would happen next. Then, around noon the next day, it all came crashing down. Breaking news alerts filled every screen. CEO Jacob Reeves arrested on multiple charges: blackmail, extortion, computer fraud. They showed footage of FBI agents leading Jacob out of his glass office in handcuffs. He wasn't smiling anymore. His expensive suit looked small on him. I watched it all from my couch, trembling. The man who'd once promised me the world now looked terrified of losing everything, and he did. His company was seized, his accounts frozen. Dozens of women came forward with stories, backed by the files Mark had handed to the authorities. In one afternoon, Jacob went from untouchable to ruined. A few hours later, my phone rang. Mark. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Mark. Joya. His voice was quiet, steady. I saw the news.
Yeah.
It's over. Mark, please. Don't start. There was a long pause. I could hear his breath, calm but distant. I'm sorry, I whispered. For everything.
I didn't know he was using me.
You knew enough, he said simply. You knew you were married. You knew what you were doing. His voice wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. Mark, please. I'll do anything. I just want to make this right. You can't. Some things don't get fixed. Some things you just have to live with. Then, quietly. Goodbye, Joya. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, holding my phone like it could somehow rewind time. But there was nothing left to fix. Jacob went to prison. Mark moved out of town a few months later. And me? I stayed in Millbrook, the town that remembered every mistake I ever made. Everywhere I went, I saw pieces of my old life. The cafe Mark and I used to visit, the road we'd drive on Sunday mornings, the house that used to feel like home. Now it was just a reminder of everything I'd lost. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that revenge never leaves anyone clean. Jacob got what he deserved. Mark got his justice. And I got my truth, the ugliest truth of all. That I destroyed the only man who ever truly loved me. Sometimes I replay that night in my head, the festival, the gasps, the video. And every time I see Mark walking away from the chaos he created, I realize he didn't just end Jacob. He ended us. And maybe that's exactly what I deserved.